Have you ever heard someone say their grandmother died of old age? It is a phrase we hear all the time. It implies that the body just sort of runs out of gas, like a car with 300,000 miles on it. But here is the thing that absolutely shocked me when I started reading this book. Technically speaking, nobody dies of old age. Not a single person. In a study of over 42,000 autopsies of centenarians, people over 100 years old, not one of them died just because they were old. They died from diseases, heart attacks, cancer, stroke. The age was the risk factor, sure, but it was the disease that pulled the trigger. And that distinction changes everything. Because if aging is just the buildup of pathology, the accumulation of damage, then theoretically, if we can stop the damage, do we stop the clock? Today we are diving into a book that claims we can do exactly that. It is not about living forever as a robot, but about blocking the specific biological pathways that make us decrepit. We are talking about zombie cells eating your brain, how drinking vinegar might trick your body into burning fat, and why a compound found in, well, let us just say distinct biological fluids might be the key to longevity. It is a wild ride.
That is exactly the right place to start, Alex. We are looking at the massive new book, How Not to Age by Dr. Michael Greger. And when I say massive, I mean it. He and his team went through something like 20,000 scientific papers to write this. And the core premise is fascinating. He argues that we have been playing whack-a-mole. We treat heart disease, then we treat cancer, then we treat Alzheimer's. But the underlying cause of all of those is aging itself. If you cure all cancer tomorrow, you only add about 3 years to the average human lifespan. Why? Because if cancer does not get you, the heart attack is waiting right around the corner. Greger wants to go upstream. He wants to treat the aging process as if it were the disease itself. He identifies 11 specific pathways of aging. These are the biological gears that grind us down. And the best part? We can grease those gears or even slow them down using food. Not expensive pills, not futuristic blood transfusions from teenagers, but things you can buy at the grocery store. It sounds too good to be true, I know, but the science he presents is incredibly dense.
Okay, let us get into these gears. The first big pathway he talks about is something called AMPK. It sounds like a heavy metal band, but apparently it is crucial. He calls it the master energy sensor. From what I gathered, this is like the fuel gauge in your car, right? When the tank gets low, the light comes on. But in our bodies, when that light comes on, it is actually a good thing. It triggers a survival mode. The body realizes there is not enough fuel coming in, so it needs to become efficient. It starts burning fat and cleaning up waste. The problem is, in our modern world, we are constantly overfilling the tank. We are eating all the time. So the light never comes on, the sensor never trips, and we just get clogged up. Greger says we need to boost this AMPK activation. It is basically the switch that tells your body to stop storing fat and start repairing itself. And interestingly, as we get older, this sensor gets rusty. It stops working as well. So we need to find ways to kickstart it manually.
Right, and this is where it gets practical. The most reliable way to activate AMPK is fasting or intense exercise. When you run until you can barely breathe, you are screaming at your body that you are out of fuel, and AMPK surges. Scientists call it exercise in a pill. In fact, the drug metformin, which is huge in the anti-aging community right now, basically works by tricking the body into thinking it is low on energy. But Greger points out that metformin has side effects. He asks, can we get the benefits of fasting and exercise without, actually starving or running a marathon every day? And he points to some specific foods. One of the big ones is barberries. They contain a compound called berberine. Now, I had never heard of barberries before this. They are these little tart red berries used in Middle Eastern cooking. But apparently, the dosage you get from just a teaspoon of them can activate AMPK almost as well as the pharmaceutical drugs. It effectively tricks your cells into cleaning house.
Barberries. Okay, I am writing that down. But here is the one that really surprised me. Vinegar. Just regular vinegar. He talks about how vinegar contains acetic acid, which the body has to burn off, and that process boosts AMPK. It is wild to think about. He mentions a study where women who used oil and vinegar dressing had half the fatal heart attacks of those who did not. Half! That seems insane for just a salad dressing. And he says you can get this benefit by adding 2 teaspoons of vinegar to a meal. But, and this is important, do not drink it straight. It will burn your esophagus. Put it on a salad or dilute it in water. He also mentions fiber. We think of fiber as just helping us go to the bathroom, but apparently our gut bacteria eat fiber and turn it into short-chain fatty acids, specifically acetic acid. So eating beans is basically like creating vinegar inside your colon, which then activates that anti-aging switch from the bottom up. It is a very unglamorous way to live forever, but the science holds up.
It is fascinating how it all connects. And that leads us directly to the second major pathway, autophagy. If AMPK is the sensor that says, hey, we need to clean up, autophagy is the janitor that actually does the cleaning. The word literally means self-eating. It sounds gross, but it is essential. Your cells accumulate junk, broken proteins, damaged mitochondria, just cellular debris. If that trash piles up, the cell malfunctions and becomes senescent, which we will get to in a minute. Autophagy is the recycling program. It breaks down that junk and turns it into new building materials. But again, this process slows down as we age. We stop taking out the trash. The house gets messy. The most reliable way to trigger this is, again, fasting. When you do not have food coming in, the body has to scrounge for spare parts, so it eats the junk. But there is a beverage that stimulates autophagy without the fasting. And Alex, this is good news for you. It is coffee.
Oh, thank goodness. I was waiting for the part where you tell me I have to give up caffeine. But wait, did he say it has to be caffeinated? Because I know sometimes the health benefits are in the beans, not the drug. I remember reading that mice-fed coffee had their autophagy kicked into high gear within hours. And the craziest part was that decaf worked just as well. It is not the caffeine, it is the polyphenols. Specifically, something called chlorogenic acid. But there is a catch, right? There is always a catch. He mentions that roasting kills these compounds. So if you are drinking that super dark, burnt French roast from a chain coffee shop, you might be destroying the very thing that helps you. And if you add dairy milk, the proteins bind to the antioxidants and block absorption. So a dark roast latte is basically zero benefit for autophagy. You want a light or medium roast, black, or maybe with a little soy milk, since soy does not seem to block it as much.
Exactly. You want those polyphenols intact. Now, let us talk about what happens when autophagy fails. When cells get too damaged to function but refuse to die, they become what scientists call senescent cells. The popular term is zombie cells, and it is a perfect name. These cells stop dividing, but they do not just sit there quietly. They secrete inflammatory chemicals that damage the healthy cells around them. They effectively bite the neighbors and turn them into zombies too. It is a chain reaction. As we age, our immune system gets worse at clearing these zombies out, so they accumulate. This inflammation is a major driver of aging. But Greger talks about senolytics. These are compounds that specifically hunt down and kill these zombie cells while leaving normal cells alone. And the top dietary sources for these compounds are surprisingly common. One is quercetin, found in onions and apples. The other is fisetin, found in strawberries.
I love the part about strawberries. Apparently, fisetin is a powerhouse for clearing senescent cells. But here is the kicker on the dosage. He mentions that to get the levels used in some of these studies, you would need to eat a lot of strawberries. However, even reasonable amounts seem to lower inflammation markers. And with quercetin, it gives a whole new meaning to an apple a day. But it has to be unpeeled, right? The bitter taste in the peel is where the magic is. He also warns about supplements. He is very cautious about taking extracted pills because usually the synergy of the whole food is what works. But I have to ask about the weirdest name in the book. We have to talk about spermidine. I mean, come on. He actually addresses the name in the book. It was discovered by Leeuwenhoek in the 1600s in, well, exactly what you think it was discovered in. But it turns out this compound is a potent anti-aging agent found in every cell of our body.
Yes, let us get past the name quickly. Spermidine is incredible. It is crucial for cell growth and, crucially, for inducing autophagy. It stabilizes our DNA. The problem is, our levels drop as we get older. By the time we are 50, we have much less of it than when we were 20. But the naked mole rat, which is this ugly little rodent that lives 10 times longer than it should and almost never gets cancer, maintains high spermidine levels its whole life. So, the theory is, if we keep our levels up, we live longer. And no, you do not have to consume body fluids to get it. The highest dietary source, pound for pound, is wheat germ. Just regular wheat germ you can sprinkle on oatmeal. Other big sources are mushrooms, peas, and a specific fermented soy product called tempeh. There was a study where high spermidine intake was linked to a lower risk of all major causes of death. It is almost like an anti-aging vitamin.
Wheat germ. It is cheap. It is easy. I like that. But now we get to the mind-bending stuff. Epigenetics. This is the idea that our genes are not our destiny. We have the hardware, the DNA, but the software, which tells the genes when to turn on and off, is editable. Greger uses the example of the queen bee. I love this analogy. You have two bees, genetically identical. One eats pollen and honey and lives 3 weeks. The other eats royal jelly and lives 3 years. That is a 50-fold difference in lifespan, just from a change in diet that switches certain genes on. It proves that environment can override genetics. He talks about the epigenetic clock, which can measure your biological age versus your chronological age. Some people are 50 on their driver's license, but 60 on the cellular level because they smoke or eat badly. But the cool part is, you can reverse it. You can actually wind the clock back.
And the tool for winding that clock back seems to be largely related to methylation. We need methyl groups to keep our DNA regulated and stable. Where do we get methyl groups? Folate. And where do we get folate? Foliage. Greens. Dark green leafy vegetables. Beans. Lentils. It comes back to the basics again. If you are deficient in folate, your epigenetic clock speeds up. Your DNA gets messy, but here's the nuance he warns against folic acid supplements for some people because the synthetic stuff is not processed the same way as the natural folate found in a spinach salad. It is better to get it from food. This connects to the other major aging accelerator, glycation. This is one of the most visual concepts in the book. Think of a piece of white bread. It is soft and flexible. Now put it in the toaster. It comes out brown, stiff, and hard. That browning is the Maillard reaction. And terrifyingly, that is exactly what is happening to our tissues as we age.
That image of the toast really stuck with me. We are slowly toasting from the inside out. Our arteries get stiff, our skin gets wrinkled and leathery. These are called AGEs, Advanced Glycation End Products, a very fitting acronym. We produce some of these internally when our blood sugar is high, which is why diabetes accelerates aging. But Greger argues the bigger problem is that we are eating them when we cook foods at high, dry heat. Grilling, frying, roasting, we are creating massive amounts of these toxins. A boiled chicken breast has a fraction of the AGEs of a fried chicken breast or a grilled one. He even calls the golden brown color of a roasted turkey the color of aging. It kills the foodie in me, honestly. I love a good sear, but the data shows that these dietary AGEs are absorbed by the body and cause inflammation. So he suggests steaming, boiling, or using moist heat. Or, if you must grill, use a marinade with vinegar or lemon, which can block the formation of these toxins.
It is a trade-off, right? Flavor for longevity. But we have to talk about the other big dietary villain he identifies. IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor 1. This is a hormone that tells your cells to grow, grow, grow. When you are a child, you need this. If you do not have enough IGF-1 as a kid, you don't grow tall. But once you are an adult, you do not want your cells growing uncontrollably. That is what cancer is. High levels of IGF-1 in adults are strongly linked to various cancers. Greger points out that there is a rare syndrome called Laron syndrome, where people essentially cannot use IGF-1. They are very short, but they are almost completely immune to cancer. They just do not get it. It is incredible proof of how powerful this hormone is. The question is, what raises our IGF-1 levels? And the answer, overwhelmingly, is animal protein. Meat, egg whites, dairy. When our liver senses a large influx of animal amino acids, it assumes we killed a mammoth and pumps out growth hormones to utilize that energy.
He uses the Tinker Toy analogy here, which I found really helpful. He says animal protein is like a set of pre-assembled Lego blocks. It is very similar to our own muscle tissue, so our body can use it immediately and aggressively. It triggers that rapid growth signal. Plant protein, on the other hand, is like getting the individual loose bricks. The body has to do more work to assemble them, so it does not trigger that massive spike in IGF-1. It is a slower, safer burn. This explains why plant-based populations often have lower cancer rates. And it challenges the gym bro science that says you need massive amounts of chicken breast to be healthy. Greger argues that while you might get bigger muscles, you are accelerating your aging clock and increasing cancer risk. He suggests keeping protein intake to the recommended daily amount, not the massive surplus many of us eat, and getting it mostly from plants. It is about balance.
And finally, all of this culminates in inflammation. Inflammaging, they call it. It is the chronic, low-grade fire burning in our bodies that drives heart disease, diabetes, and dementia. Every pathway we have discussed, AMPK, autophagy, glycation, IGF-1, they all feed into this. If your cells are full of junk, they get inflamed. If your tissues are stiff with sugar, they get inflamed. If you are growing too fast, you get inflamed. The takeaway from this book is not that you have to be perfect. It is that these systems are interconnected. You can pull a lever here, like eating more fiber, and it helps fix the inflammation over there. You can drink coffee to help clean your cells, which then lowers the burden on your immune system. It is a holistic picture. Greger sums a lot of this up in his Anti-Aging 8 checklist in the back of the book, but the principles are clear. Whole plants, less meat, keep moving, and stop cooking your food to death.
It is a lot to digest, literally. But what I appreciate is that it gives us agency. We are not just victims of the calendar. We are the mechanics of our own biology. If I can swap my dark roast for a medium roast, maybe eat some barberries if I can find them, and boil my chicken instead of charring it to a crisp, I am making a difference. I might even try the wheat germ, just a little sprinkle. It is empowering. The idea that we can die young, but as old as possible, is a goal worth shooting for. Living vibrant, healthy lives until the very end, rather than spending the last 20 years in a slow decline. That is the promise of How Not to Age.
Absolutely. It is about adding life to your years, not just years to your life. And Dr. Greger's rigorous approach gives us a roadmap that is based on evidence, not just hype. So, go find some lentils, brew some tea, and take care of those cells. They are the only ones you have got. Thanks for listening to our deep dive into the science of longevity. We will catch you next time with another exploration into the ideas shaping our world.